it was one of those lessons that really made me say, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. But on the last day, a retreater said to me, she said, Hollis, thank you for loving me the way you did this weekend. And that got me. I was like, okay.
Let me find a way.
Let me find a way, because that's a real thing, that we don't experience love often enough in a way that's not romantic love, that there's no attachment to it. And I want to create that, especially for women. I'm not asking anything of you but for you to be in this space and be you.
It's Retreat and Grow Rich, the podcast. I'm Darla LeDoux, best-selling author, coach, and retreat leader, and I'm on a mission to normalize transformation on the planet, one intimate retreat at a time. This show is dedicated to the coaches, consultants, healers, leaders, and light workers who are here to hold space for the truth that transforms lives and get paid for it. Expert retreat and business tips, strategies, stories, and magic. It's your weekly mini retreat delivered right to your ears. Let's do this. Welcome to today's Retreat and Grow Rich podcast. I am super excited to be here today with the fabulous Hollis Gray. I had the chance to learn about Hollis through her website, and her materials just really intrigued me with the work she's doing with retreats in the world, specifically creating spaces for healing and growth for women of color. She is a storyteller. She is a Reiki master. My first training was in Reiki many years ago, but I just have Reiki 1. She is a healer, a chef, a published author, and an intuitive. And then you sum it up to say an unapologetic Black queer magic woman.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that sums it up.
That's amazing. And I was really drawn and captivated by the type of imagery that you use on your website.
Oh,
and, it just really feels like you're not afraid. You're just going to be you. You're going to share what's going on with you totally authentically. And it really drew me in. So tell us a little bit about your story. And you mentioned something to me about lights on and off. And I don't know what that means. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So I love that you say, I appear to be unafraid, right? Because that was not always the case. I lived many, many years of just like censoring myself, being very careful about what I say, what I do, what parts of myself I share. And so that really changed when I was about 27. My mom got sick, and there was a lot I didn't know about her, and that I had learned through her being sick. And I realized that I didn't want to be that way. And I realized a lot of I don't think they were new strengths. I think they were just revealed to me in that situation of what I was capable of. And one of the things that I think has been a consistent theme in my life is my level of faith, even as a child. I love to use like the example of this red wall, right? Like people can see the red wall and they know that it's red because they've been told that it's red and that's this color. Whereas me, I'm like, no, it's red because I feel it and it's fiery and it's passion. And so that's how I know that it's red. That is a testament to my faith, my imagination, my belief that magic absolutely is a part of our everyday. And so what I mean by that, a light switch went on or off, if you think about walking into a room, right? You're either walking into a dark room or you're walking into a room full of light and someone turns the light off and now you can't see. I'm not really sure which one it was for me. I don't know if I had been walking around in the dark for so long and then the light came on, or some part of me, or I was walking around with this rose-colored glasses of like everything is so beautiful and then the light went off and now I have to figure out what's around me. I say that because when I turned 30, I felt I guess an easy word would be a shift. I remember it the night before, sitting on my bed, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? Like, one of those dramatic, I'm a Taurus, so I'm slightly dramatic. Um, and, it was really hard for me. My mother, although she was no longer sick, so my mom had a heart attack at the age of 50. And that was really, really hard. I am the oldest of all girls. My mother did not have health insurance at the time. And she was what appeared to be a fine, healthy woman. And in the blink of a second, she had a heart attack and then had a stroke, literally within a week span.
Scary.
Extremely scary. I went from having the doctors telling me to make plans to, I'm not sure what will happen, to, oh, she's fine.
Wow.
And so, that was from 27. I spent my 27th birthday in the hospital with my mom.
So she was in the hospital for a while.
She was in the hospital for a while. She was on life support for maybe 2.5 weeks. And a part of my story that is one of my favorite things to tell people is that my mom actually opened her eyes on my birthday. That was the first day, my 27th birthday. And the first thing that she wrote on a piece of paper was happy birthday. Wow. And so for me, I was blown away, I was like, oh, Mom.
That's incredible.
Right? Like I would never have thought that would have been what she would have asked for or done. But it also was proof of the faith that we had. It was also proof for me of the magic.
Yeah, she was connected to something to be,
absolutely.
Connected to the time. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
So Hollis, you said that you learned, that you didn't really know her as well as you thought.
I didn't know her at all. I knew her.
Why do you think that was? Not necessarily, we don't need to know her business, but why do you think that was? I
think that as women, we are taught certain things. We don't talk about things in public. We maintain our emotions, our healing, our experience, plus our families, plus our friends, plus, plus our romantic partners. And so, and then as a child, there, especially in households of color, you're the mother, you're the parent, and I'm the child. There's just things that we don't talk about.
It's just not appropriate.
It's just not appropriate. Yeah. And so I think that there was a lot that was going on. I didn't know that she was as sick as she was. Partly because I'm sure that she didn't want to burden me with that. And so she made the decision for me that it would have been too much for me to handle.
So she knew something was up.
I think so. I really, she had to have. When I remember talking to the doctor and going over everything, there was no way that she would not have known those things. She went into the hospital for gallbladder surgery to remove them, only to be literally 3 minutes before being signed out having her first stroke. Wow. And so, though there were just things that were going on that she just didn't talk to me about. So that was a big lesson for me.
So you said by 30 she was healthy, and how did that go for you guys? Did it bring you closer? Was she able to talk about it, or did it send you on your own journey?
It sent me on my own journey. My mother doesn't really remember. She knows that something happened. She doesn't know how bad it was. I don't know if she doesn't remember, or she just would rather block it out. Yeah. And so that was really hard because there was no space for me to grieve, because although I'm so grateful that she is still here, she is very different now. And so there are things about my mother that no longer are here.
Yeah.
And as the oldest daughter, that was something I never had that time to process what was really happening, to process what our relationship would look like after the stroke, after the heart attack. I didn't have that time. I literally went from, you're the oldest, you have to make this decision of planning what will happen if she does transition, to letting everyone in the family know what's going on, to signing papers. Because the insurance wasn't there, I am now responsible for these
Paying
things.
those bills.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So there was all of this, and getting to know my mom, because I didn't know her. You know, I knew pieces of her. I knew who I thought her to be, but I didn't know her. I knew her as a mother. I didn't know her as a woman. And so part of my journey was understanding, I think, the process and the phases and stages that women go through in life, and being able to separate that from being the mother, the parent, to, you know, you're still human. You still have
could see her more as a woman than mom.
Yep, exactly.
How did that shape this commitment to authenticity that you have?
So I left the DC area because I was exhausted from everything, and moved to an island for about 2 years. And the experience that I had there was so freeing. And I was doing what I thought was necessary for me. I didn't really think about, or I didn't care either, what it meant for anyone else. This was the first time that I was doing something for me. And in doing that, I would receive so many messages, like online, about how inspiring it was. I thought that was really interesting, for people to be inspired for something that I was just doing, to, like, it's like blinking to me. Like, it just made sense.
You mean that you would leave DC and go create this life for yourself that was a little more relaxed?
Yep. Yeah. To me, that made sense. To me, it was like, yeah, of course, why not? And I recognized the privilege in that not many people have that. And so it was through all of that that made me realize the importance of it. Because I was thinking, if I had been more of myself in the beginning, I wouldn't have needed this complete retreat to get to this place. And I absolutely love who I am now.
Yes.
I can't imagine not doing this, which is why it's so important to be all of yourself and not be afraid, even of the parts that, you know, may not be as favorable. I couldn't imagine this feeling that I feel probably 98% of the time. I couldn't imagine not feeling that. I can't go backwards.
So that I'm imagining that's the feeling that you hold space for your clients and the people that come with you on retreat. And, you know, I know for me, I was probably in my early 30s when I started waking up, but I was still making a lot of pretty unconscious decisions. And it took me some time. And I'm imagining people think like, whoa, Hollis, how did you wake up? You know, because some people never do. And I work with a lot of women that are in their 50s and, you know, that waking up at that time as life is beginning to change. So, you know, why do you think that happened for you? And how do you use that in your work?
I think that, I really do think that my mother's experience was a really big part of it, of having to go through that at a fairly young age. And one of the things that I'm actually, this might sound weird, but one of the things that I'm actually grateful for, in terms of her having that stroke, was my mom's ability to be really honest with me. That experience, I think, and her being honest with me, because, you know, she's in her 50s now. I was really surprised that she still has hesitation and fear around doing things that she wants to do. Yeah. This is a woman who had a near-death experience and is still worried about what other people think. And so that really bothered me to know that she still was holding that for herself, and that I had just, for whatever reason, jumped out there. I wanted that for her, and realizing that I really want that for all women, honestly, because I think that we hold a lot. I think we carry a lot, and we don't get that moment. A lot of us don't get that moment to even just consider what if.
Yeah.
I think there's power in even if you don't do it, but just considering it, is power in itself.
How did you decide to host your first retreat?
Actually, I never wanted to do retreats.
Oh. They chose you?
They chose me. They really chose me. When I moved to the island, I moved on the west side of the island, really, really secluded, very different. And I had a friend come visit, and she was sitting at my balcony. I had just prepared breakfast for her, and she asked me a series of questions of like, do you always set the table for breakfast? I said, I set my table for all of my meals. I was a chef, a personal chef. And so I would do that for clients, and like, why am I not doing this for myself? So, she said, you're really good at this. I feel so welcome and so relaxed in this space. Did you ever think about doing retreats? And I was like, what is a retreat? Like, I knew what work retreats were. I was in nonprofit before I started my own companies. And so I was familiar with that. Staff retreats, which I hated. I hated a staff retreat. And so in my mind, I was like, I don't want to.
Did you hate them because it was just forced exercises with people who weren't really connecting?
Exactly. That you hit the nail on the head. It was like, I would go to these retreats with the entire staff of the company. Some people you have no idea. You've never met them before. And I would be on a weekend. So I work with you all every day, and I have to come on a weekend and spend it with you. They were never in beautiful places. They were always in like a lodge or a hotel or someplace cold. And they were exercises. They were really like strategic planning. They weren't anything like what I do now.
Right.
So when she made that suggestion, I was like, no, I'm good. I'm going to just lay in this hammock. I'll figure it out. And then the day after she left, I was laying in my hammock, and I think I probably was crying. It was one of those moments where I was falling apart and no one was around. And I was really appreciative that no one was around. And I thought this was really nice. It was really nice to get in this hammock and cry. If I want, I can go to the beach later. I can still eat good food. I can process what's happening. I would love to offer this to other women, because again, it's another level of privilege that I had and recognized that not everyone gets. And so if I could create a part of that, and my home on the island was absolutely beautiful, and it could accommodate a group of women. And so it made sense.
And it was born. What was your first retreat about? Did it have a theme?
It did. It was returning to self. Because it was what I was doing a lot. And when I started, a lot of my retreats were based off of where I was in my life at that moment. And so that's what it was.
I obviously work with retreat leaders, and, it sometimes takes something for people to get present to like, oh yeah, this is the journey I went through. Oh yeah, I could guide others on this journey. You know, what is it that really is the transformation I've had that I want to share?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you kind of did that naturally. Like, did you
Mhm.
have any like, oh my gosh, what should I do? Or was it just,
Nope.
oh yeah, returning to yourself?
Yeah, it really was. I wanted people to feel what I was feeling because it felt so good. And I was really, really proud of where I was. I think the last 2 years leading up to me moving was overwhelming and exhausting. And me being able to just rest and lay on a beach, that for me being near water was very cleansing.
Yeah.
I knew that I needed some kind of spiritual healing experience, and I was doing all of those things naturally. They were just things that I was doing because I knew that I needed that.
It's just really impressive because most people don't recognize that. They don't know to give it to themselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I really, this is gonna, and I think I've heard you say this before. You talk about the woo-woo.
Yeah.
That I am convinced that I have beautiful spirit guides and ancestors that have been preparing me for this work.
I got
there have been times that I've done ritual and did it just because it resonated, it made sense, and later, months later, I would read about it and I would be like, oh, that's what I was doing? I didn't know what it was that I was doing.
Wow.
I just knew that I needed to do these things.
Amazing. That's so beautiful. So how did your retreats evolve? Like, because I know you're taking people on like a super special Panama retreat coming up, which feels like, you know, just looking at the page, I can feel the energy of it. How did you get from there to here?
Yeah. So the first way that I got was 2 years ago. I decided to hire a business coach, and she took a look at my retreats and she broke it down for me. And I was only charging at the time like $500. And when she broke it down, she said, you realize that you're making $3.02 an hour for what I was offering at the time.
Yes.
And that really struck a chord. Before moving, I had a successful catering and events company. And so business is not foreign to me.
Right.
But that part of it was. And so I knew then that I needed to make some shifts a little bit. And so slowly shifting from a low price point to a higher one. And then from the higher one to, I was still exhausted afterwards. That's not the goal either, to bringing someone in. And then honestly, because of the hurricane that happened in Puerto Rico, I ended up coming home to the DMV area. And for that brief second, I didn't know what I was going to do because at the time, the retreats were only happening in Puerto Rico. It was what I was familiar with. It was my home. And so I really had to sit with that. And so again, the same thing, I went through my own ritual of trying to figure out what was next. Is this something that I'm supposed to do? And I came to the conclusion that absolutely it was. And literally, this is why I talk about ritual and being close to spirit with my clients, because I asked for it that night, and the very next day, basically what I asked for was the opportunity. I said, if this is what I'm supposed to do, please reveal to me what that looks like. And literally the next day, I got the opportunity to have the retreat in Grenada. And so that's how it evolved again. And then Grenada was still a lesson for me, because now I'm holding retreats outside of Puerto Rico, outside of the DMV area. So now this is new. I had some lessons there. And even with those lessons, the retreaters enjoyed themselves. And the day that we left,
I got to ask, when you say I had some lessons, what's that mean?
That means there were questions that I didn't think to ask at the time, important things that I didn't take into consideration, like
about the venue and things?
Like about the venue, currency exchanges, budgeting correctly, all of those things. You know, I'm used to doing retreats in my home. I did not lose money, but I did not make any money either.
Yeah.
It broke even. And at the time I was happy for that, because I was more so concerned that these women were trusting me to take them outside of the country and have an experience and everything be covered. And so that was my focus with the lessons. And at that moment,
I've had lessons, girl.
Yeah, it was one of those lessons that really made me say, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. But on the last day, a retreater said to me, she said, Hollis, thank you for loving me the way you did this weekend. And that got me. I was like, okay.
Let me find a way.
Let me find a way, because that's a real thing, that we don't experience love often enough in a way that's not romantic love, that there's no attachment to it. And I want to create that, especially for women. I'm not asking anything of you but for you to be in this space and be you. And so her saying that to me, I was like, okay, I've got to make this work.
Yeah.
And because they were asking for much longer days, and because I am now in the season of stretching myself, this is my commitment to me, to stretch myself. I took a second and I said, what can I do that would be different, that will also stretch me? And now the retreats have evolved a little bit, where we do, I call it like a twofer, where it's like the international retreats are experiences, and they are wholeheartedly just immersing yourself in the culture. And then we have, at a later date, the work. And that, yes, the work, which is the part that keeps the relationship going. Now you've had this great fun with all of us. We've immersed into this culture. You know that it's there's always an underlining magic element to my retreats. So it's usually like diving a little bit deeper in ritual and what that looks like for that culture. And then it opens the conversation. It opens that conversation to what does your magic look like? So now the retreats have gone from, you have this awesome experience, and now we get to do the work, because you get a taste of what your results could be like. So now we work backwards a little bit, and you get to do the work and create your own magic. So they really evolved on their own.
Love it. And are they, talk about the women who come.
Mm-hmm. So the women who come are my favorites. They are usually in the age range of 27 to about 51.
27, no accident, when you started your transformation.
You know what?
Isn't that interesting?
Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't realize that, but you're right. Yes. They are mostly women of color. And that is an intentional part, because I've had women say to me, thank you, we need this space. Yeah. So the retreats didn't start that way. They were just women. I just knew that I wanted women, but we have events and workshops and classes that include women. The experiences, though, are catered to women of color, because that's what was asked of me, to create these spaces just for them.
Yeah. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You have women of color from all backgrounds?
From all backgrounds, absolutely. I have had young, old, mothers, students, sisters, college, business owners, traditional work areas. But the common theme with them all are women who know that there's something that they don't, I call it magic. They don't have a word for it yet, but they know there's something.
There's something
and they're
more.
Curious.
Like maybe intuition is how they're relating to it.
Yep.
Or God.
Absolutely. And so because whatever shows up in me resonates with them, and that's why they come, because they're like, oh, I do think that it has to do with my level of faith. I am one of those people that to the very last minute, I'm still like, it's going to happen. And so, I think that it's that women really enjoy that.
Yeah. What, I recently read a post from a friend of mine who's a woman of color, and it said, I've been scrolling through my Facebook and seeing pictures of retreats, with one woman of color in a room of white women, and it was a genuine inquiry of, what's going on here? Is it that people don't feel welcome? Is it that, kind of like looking at the root of that? And I personally love that you're creating spaces for women of color to heal, where there's safety and, there has to be a more automatic safety in that
Absolutely.
space.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's been your experience with that in terms of, the coaches you've hired and the retreats you've attended and spaces you've been in?
Yes. So I have been in spaces, actually, to be honest, I'm one of those rare that have been in spaces that have been of color. I have been in spaces where it's more women of color, and maybe one or two or a handful that are women not of color. But the energy feels very different. And there's still a feeling of censorship and of being careful about what you say or how you act or what you share. And I'm not going to say that it's because they are there, because that's not been my experience. But I have had, so we typically do like a questionnaire when we have retreaters, and that has been a consistent across the board, is that they really would like a space where they feel completely comfortable. They don't feel judged. They don't feel like the spotlight is taken away from their whatever they're talking about at the time. And that
is that an experience you think that people have had in white rooms?
I think so. I think that it's hard to share your story if you feel like the people in the room can't relate. And so the feedback that you're getting is not coming from an even playing field, because it's just not there. The clarity isn't there. The understanding of exactly where you're coming from is not there. Or a common thing is flipping it. And so instead of just listening to the story that's being shared, it's, well, I feel like, or I know that in my situation, it's this. And sometimes all that a woman needs is for you to just listen.
Yeah. Well, those are coaching skills too. And also for white women to do the inner work.
Yes.
On our own privilege, and really recognizing that and recognizing history in America.
Yes. And I think that there are spaces for that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that it's something that especially Holistree, I don't think that it's something that we will completely separate, because we do have events that welcome all. I think that having the perspective is valuable. But I do think that having a space, and it's a beautiful thing to watch a woman be completely comfortable and share and come to her aha moments that she didn't even think of, in a space where she feels completely herself. And so that is my role in anything that I create, is to just, I want you to come to that moment of, oh, this is who I am. Oh, here I am.
Yeah. We as leaders need to do the work to be able to hear and be with and be present with all stories without making it about us, or having to pretend like we have an answer or look good.
Yeah. My favorite thing to say is, I don't have an answer. I prefer, I mean, I could give you an answer, but I think there's value in, and it's a part of my own healing and growth journey. I need to be comfortable with saying, I don't have an answer for you, but thank you for sharing your story. Or would you like an answer? We can come up with one together.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Any advice that you would have for, other retreat leaders around this creating safety for all people?
I think that if you have the ability or the resources to actually get to know the women one-on-one first, it's really, there's value in that. I mean, questionnaires are great, but one of the things that we have put in place is not everyone who registers for a retreat gets to go on a retreat. You know, like there is an interview process. And so that, in the beginning, I was worried that doing that would make people feel singled out or judged. And it's really not that at all. Being a retreat facilitator is about creating the relationship. And if I really want to build a relationship with you, a real relationship, then there's value in having that conversation and taking that time to have that. I think that in itself is really helpful for creating your spaces.
Yeah. So like an interview or enrollment process that really supports them, that they know they're in the right room and you know they're the right person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And this is even more important as you're taking people for 7 days to Panama.
Right. Absolutely.
I've held a few international retreats and mine are 5 days. That's the max that I've done. So it's, and when you're traveling with someone and, there's going to be experiences that are out of people's comfort zones. Yep, it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially for retreats that are of that kind of length, having a conversation, you should be having these conversations with your retreaters because you need to know. It's also helpful for like troubleshooting. And that is a lesson that I learned from Grenada. Part of our trip was getting on a ferry. And half of my retreaters got sick. And so had I had the conversation with them beforehand about what their comfort zone was, if they had any fears, those kinds of things, I would have been able to plan a little better around what was happening.
How did you choose Panama?
I chose Panama because originally I wanted to go to Costa Rica. And I felt like everyone was going to Costa Rica. I felt like Costa Rica has been the thing these past years.
Been played out?
Yeah. And so I wanted to be a little different. And I was going through the list of possible places and asking others, what they were interested in. And someone had suggested, they said, oh, have you considered Panama? And I said, no, I've never really thought about it. And we were going through the possibilities. And I knew that this being a longer trip, I needed to have another facilitator. I'm very clear of the kind of facilitator I would want to have help. And the facilitator that I chose is from Panama. And I didn't realize that at the time that she was from Panama until we had a conversation and she said, well, I'm from there. I said, well, this is perfect. I guess this is what we're going to do. And that's
amazing. So what can women expect from that experience? What's the healing or the magic there?
So I am calling this particular retreat. I really like cutesy names for my retreats. This one is called Aphrodisiac, and it's falling in love with Afro-Latino culture and history. And so the magic is coming from falling in love with yourself first, right? Because I think that we are magical and just awesome. And then falling in love with the culture. So Latin culture is very spicy. It's very passionate. And then you add a little bit of African in there and it takes you to a whole nother level. And so the magic is that falling in love, knowing that, life can be spicy, and my term is living a juicy life. If what you do doesn't make you juicy, it's not the right thing for you. And so all of that will be tied into the retreat. We're going to eat some amazing food. There's going to be live music because music is power. We're going to meet some amazing people who are just history filled. I think that there's power in history as well.
And how did you meet them?
So the co-facilitator, Solena, she took a group there a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And so I've luckily have vetted a lot of our tour guides and a lot of the spaces that we're going through her, because that was an experience.
That's awesome.
That I already had. Mm-hmm.
It's so much value to be able to take people, to connect with humans in a culture that you can't just find on the internet.
Yep.
That's
exactly.
Amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. The women are excited.
But you have space available, right? So if someone is listening. I have space
available. Yes. So we have 3 women registered already. We can get up to 15 women. I would love to have 15 women that want to experience this. One of the things that we are toying with is the opportunity for a mother and daughter to come. And so if she is over the age of 15, she can come.
That feels really special, given that your story was really sparked by your relationship with your mother.
Yep. I'm excited. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful. And one of the great things is that it's a twofer. So we're doing 2 days in Panama City and 3 days in Cologne. So they get city life and then they get beach life. And then Solena is a massage therapist. And so they will get private massages on the beach.
I'd like that right now.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different pieces going into this. You'll get to experience a little bit of everything.
Awesome. Well, we'll have the link for that and for holistree.com, 1L,
yes.
In the show notes. And so people can find you. I'm curious also, since you introduce yourself as, Black queer magic, what role does being queer play in your life and your business? Like in terms of, you're clearly an advocate for women of color. And I'm guessing you know this about me, but I came out at 39. So
I did not know that you came out at 39.
I did. Yes.
Wow.
I grew up in a small town, population 500. There's not a lot of, I didn't know anybody who was out. I really didn't even understand the concept.
Yeah.
And that was how I was raised. My parents divorced when I was young, and my mom would always find a new man, so we were moving from one house to the other. And I feel I interpreted the message, you have to have a man to survive. So I never, just wasn't even in my awareness until I started my business and started doing personal development work.
Yep.
And became aware that something wasn't quite working for me.
Yeah. So you started with, we started talking about how I'm unafraid.
Yeah.
I came out my freshman year in college. So I was 20. And that wasn't by choice. That was something that I was convinced was necessary to happen at the time. I wasn't ready. And so,
how does that happen that you were convinced it was necessary?
My mother and my stepfather at the time were getting divorced, and my stepfather knew and my father knew, but my mother did not. Oh. And so the divorce was one of those, Lifetime movie horrible ones. And I was really afraid that he was going to use that against her. And so I had to tell her.
Wow.
I didn't want that to be like a shock.
Yeah.
Given everything else that was going on at the time, I didn't want to do that to her. And so I came out. And it was not an easy process, and it wasn't pretty. But I had college to go back to, I lived on campus, so I was away from family, so that made it much easier. And then I think I probably went to a therapist around this time, and she called it my rebellious stage, because I was like, I'm out, and I don't care what you say. This was a lot. And so that was my stance for a really long time. And then I just didn't feel the need to have to explain what I was doing to people. I mean, it was like, this is only a part of who I am. You know, it's not all of me. I don't want that to be the focus. Somewhere along the line, though, that turned from, I don't want it to be a focus, to I was fearful that it would affect my business. Yeah. Because years later, I left the corporate world and started my catering company and personal chef service. And because I was going into homes, I was really afraid that
I could imagine. Yeah.
So I didn't say anything. You know, if it was mentioned, sure, but it was never a thing. But then, now that I'm in this space of being authentically who I am, right? Like I can't leave that part out of my life. You know, I have an amazing partner she's probably more invested in business than I am. And I knew that I can't say I'm authentic and unapologetic if I'm not showing all of who I am. And so I've gotten really, really comfortable with who I am. And I mentioned before, I really do love my life and I love the person that I've become.
It really shows. It comes across.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So that part, I think also what has helped is that I've been in business for a while. I've had 3 businesses, you know, in the past 7 years. At this point, I really feel like I'm in that space of, if you decide you don't want to work with me because I'm queer, because I'm Black, because I'm a woman, because I have blonde hair some days and gray hair other days and green hair, I'm just really comfortable in that. And I understand that who is for me, business-wise, is going to be for me, regardless of what I look like or what I do.
And they'll love you even more.
Absolutely.
Because of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not easy, though.
It's not easy. It's not, but you know what? When you, that's also the reason about creating community, real community that loves and supports you. And, you know, loving and supporting someone doesn't mean that you have to necessarily agree with all of their decisions. It just means that you respect what they're doing. And that's all that I require. I don't require much. I don't care if you don't agree. It doesn't affect me in any way.
That certainly helps you to run a business, because if we're worried about what everybody thinks, it's terrifying.
Absolutely.
I had my business when I came out, and I mean, I was completely terrified. I tell the story sometimes. I hid in my basement with my laptop. I lived by myself with my dog, but I hid in the basement and Googled, "Can you be 40 and gay and not know it?"
Oh, wow.
I was that afraid to even, like, that anyone would know I was even thinking this. And then once I realized, and I gave myself a new experience and realized, like, yes, this is so right. I thought I was going to have to close my business because I was working with people on authenticity and alignment. And I thought, well, no one's going to listen to me. I just need to close my business. I don't know what I'm going to do. But to your point, fortunately, I had, fostered community around me of people who loved me, and it wasn't a thing for them. And so I had the strength to do it. I think Spirit gave it to me in divine right timing when I was surrounded by a community that could hold me and not judge me.
Yep. It's a great feeling, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It is. And I'm just this year kind of really thinking about, I share the story in my work because it's so interesting how Spirit led me there. But I'm just now, thinking about, well, how could I be more of an advocate? How can I be more of an advocate to increase love and acceptance on the planet in general?
Yeah. Yeah. It starts with you. That sounds so like cliche to say, but it's really the truth, in being clear and committed to what you're doing and making sure things are in alignment. That statement that the retreater said to me about just experiencing love, period. Love really, it's cliche to say, but love really is the answer to like anything.
It is.
Yeah.
Some days are harder than others to remember that, but it absolutely is.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I am so grateful to have connected with you. I just absolutely love who you are in the world and the light you're bringing.
Thank you.
And the space you're creating. And I really hope some of our listeners decide to adventure with you to
Absolutely.
Panama or a future retreat. So they can get more over at holistree.com.
Yep.
I recommend checking out Hollis's blog because it's awesome. And they can hop on your list, right? So they can get announcements of new.
Yep, we send out a newsletter once a month. Nothing too heavy, you know. And whether you are in the DMV area or anywhere else, there are many, many ways to connect with us.
Awesome. And then also follow you on Instagram, the holistreecollective.com.
Yep.
Your images are gorgeous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Hollis, for who you are. Thank you for letting me ask the questions that I was, really looking for answers for. I don't take that lightly. I recognize my privilege as a white woman in the United States. And, I appreciate you being a voice for healing for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Retreat and Grow Rich, the podcast. If so, please share your experience and spread the word. Also, please subscribe over on iTunes and leave us a fabulous review. It makes a big difference in helping to get the word out. And you can join me in my mission to normalize transformation on the planet, one intimate retreat at a time. You can find show notes from this and all of our episodes over at alignedentrepreneurs.com/podcast. If you'd like to understand the inner workings of my retreat-based business model and build your confidence in your retreat dreams, you can grab my book, Retreat and Grow Rich, over on Amazon. It's the entrepreneur's guide to powerful, profitable retreats. If you've been wanting to incorporate transformational retreats into your fabulous business model, but you're not quite sure where to start, hop on over to retreatleaderquiz.com. In this short 10-question quiz, you will receive your personalized results, one of 6 retreat leader archetypes that will show you what your strengths are as a retreat leader, the pitfalls to look out for, and even give you a sample agenda that you can take and make your own. Again, that's at retreatleaderquiz.com.